cops roll in and we're like, fuck, dude, like our last day, like we're done. Like the shit's like popping, looks tits. And the cops were like amazed. They were like blown away. They're like, oh my God, like you guys did this? Carry on. We put flowers down and candles, do a prayer for Skate, like right where he passed away, right where he died. Yeah. Where Trent and Sandman were picking up pieces of his clothes. And we all walked down the tracks together, holding hands, singing Kumbaya.
CBS presents this program in color.
Welcome to the Can't Be Stopped podcast. It's 2025, January 19th. Got my boy Bleek here, and we're doing our third episode of this podcast. So, Cody, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on the west side, went to Santa Monica High School. After growing up in Malibu, getting shipped to Santa Monica, thank God, because there was a bastion of culture in Santa Monica compared to like this little country town, Malibu. So like my first introduction to graffiti was like Hand Control, seeing con art t-shirts.
Well, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
My childhood was pretty rough. I grew up in Woodland Hills with my grandmother and my mother, and then my parents were divorced at that point, and my mother was on a date and died in a drunk driving accident. So I was 6 years old, then got shipped to live with my father in Malibu, and he was a raging alcoholic. He was like a standout football player in college, at USC, in high school, San Fernando High School. And I think maybe like CTE even led to his demise, because I mean, he drank like a pint of fucking vodka a day. He was inebriated by the time I got home every single day. 24 pack of Budweiser. I mean, I'd literally have to like rummage through his shorts to like find money for the RTD to get to school the next day because they were so cheap. And just my stepmother was like, I don't know, she was coked out or fucking on pills, whatever it may be. But so I went from a very stable home, very stable environment, loving, to just being thrown into the fire. And yeah, it was rough. It was really rough. I mean, even as a kid, I had like suicidal thoughts. I was like, I can't live through this. It was like, I was getting like abused every day, like not sexually or anything, but like physically and mentally, like you're a piece of shit. You're a loser. I was 6 years old, like one day they left me home because the water heater broke and it burst all over my toy chest or whatever where my clothes were because I didn't have a bedroom. I just slept on a futon. And, at 6 years old, they're like, hey, well, make sure you're here for the guy to fix the water heater. Why my dad went to the bar next door, had, donned the beachcomber. And by the time I went to get my dad, to when the water heater guy came to fix it, ran over to the bar. He's sitting at the bar with all the locals. And by the time we got back to the apartment, fucking the guy was gone. So of course I caught like a massive beat down. And that was just like, that was my childhood, like summed up, like the cops would come sometimes and they're like, if you say anything, they would cover me. After my stepmom was stomping me out in the bathroom on the floor while my dad was holding me down, it was like, if you say anything, you're going into foster care and it's going to be a million times worse. And like, as a kid, you're just like freaked out. Like, what do I do? Like this is terrible. But luckily I had a great, amazing grandmother who would come and get me on the weekends and save me. And like, it was so bad. Like I wouldn't even do homework. I was just like lost. I was completely lost and they didn't help me with homework or anything. So like after school, I would just take my homework and stash it in the bushes, hop on the RTD, public transportation as a fucking 6-7-year-old. And my grandma would like, come over from Woodland Hills, over Malibu Canyon where Kobe died. And you know, like she would sit me down and like actually nurture me and help me study and like teach me. And eventually I graduated from college and, you know, this is where I'm at. Like I work in the film industry, working on like summer blockbuster hits like Top Gun and Gladiator. So like life has navigated a route for me, so to speak.
So going back to your dad and, you know, him and your stepmom abused you a lot.
Yeah.
What was, how did that feel when you were growing up to like eventually come from a childhood like you grew up in, like kind of what made you get into graffiti? Like who spurred you on, and like, how did you find graffiti? Because I didn't know, actually, this is like the first time we've ever maybe talked about your, I knew a little bit about your childhood. I knew that you had lost, when I met you in 1997, I knew that your parents had passed away. What do you think that graffiti
saved my life?
Do you feel like graffiti, you found something you really liked when you found graffiti, and who got you into graffiti?
Yeah, it definitely gave me a foundation. It gave me like a surrogate family, especially with CBS, you know, like, fuck, I was like 20 years old. I was a youngster, but, yeah, in high school, when I went from Malibu, you know, again, it was like, we didn't even have a high school. They shipped us to Santa Monica, and Santa Monica was like, you wouldn't believe it now because you know how gentrified it is, but it was just a hub of gang activity. There was graffiti writers, there was break dancers, you know, gangsters, obviously. You had Santa Monica, 17th Street, you had Graveyard Crips, and those guys became my friends, like on the football team, you know? But when we had a race riot that one of my homeboys started, I didn't realize that these dudes would turn on each other, like, at the drop of a dime. I was like, oh shit, I thought we were like a family. And then next thing you know, they're calling their brothers and cousins like, yo, we're going to kill this fool. And like, you know, like guns breaking out in high school, dudes hopping the fence, like Santa Monica gangsters, like trying to like kill my homeboy. But, yeah, like back then, that's when I was, you know, the 3rd Street Promenade was where we would kick it. And there was a couple shops, you know, I mean, they even had like liquor stores on the promenade, and we'd go there to try to meet chicks and whatever. And one of the shops had a Can Control, you know, magazine section. So like when I opened that up, I was like, oh my God, Mech, Mirror, Anger, Skate, Power, you know, I was like, Circus, like dudes, I was like blown away. I was like, this is amazing, because I mean, we had graffiti all over Santa Monica High School, but it was mostly like, you know, graffiti in the bathrooms, graffiti on the desks, like mostly tags. Obviously, you're not going to see like bombs or throw ups in high school unless you went to Fairfax, I guess. But yeah, and of course, like everybody was like, you know, oh yeah, this is what this is about. You know, they deciphered this clandestine alphabet to me, you know, like what, like these 3 letters meant, like it was a crew, you know, because I didn't know what it meant. And one of my teammates in high school that I played football with, we would take the RTD every day, and he wrote Weiss. And Mexican kid from Malibu, Jose, yoked out, like fucking starter jacket, Raiders hat, fucking headphones, ain't no future in your front. And he was tagging Weiss, W-E-E-S. And, you know, because these letters connected real fast on the bus, because we're bus taggers. And, you know, he taught me how to tag with what's it called? One of those, compasses that they would give you with a sharp end. And I would even see skate tags on the bus, and like dudes from AWR, like Dan, and you know, so
what bus line was that?
434. Now it's like the 534, and it would go straight to the promenade. We'd have to walk to high school, but yeah, when I got to high school,
Was that the blue line or the
RTD?
RTDs?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right when I got to high school, like my first day, like it was summer school, and I walked into the bathroom and the ceilings were bombed, the toilets were bombed. Like, there was lighter tags on the ceilings. Like everything was just demolished. And like this janitor came up to me, this black guy, and he was like, "Hey man, don't stand in one spot for too long because they'll tag on you too." And I was like, "Oh shit, I better fucking learn this culture." And, yeah, luckily I had Jose to show me the ropes because his brother was a tagger who wrote Noid 2 or something. And this kid, Chris, was in my class, and he had like a dope tag. And Jiggs's little brother, Josh 132, had a crew called the Bees, Circle Bees, whatever. And I looked up to them. And then I met Jiggs and Mech at my boy Ryan Soroko's house because he had his own apartment when we were in high school. So my best friend Sean would take me over there, and we were just like getting heavy into hip hop. Like, I mean, it was like my first passion was hip hop and then graffiti. But yeah, we would go over there and we met rapper homies like Ed and Jose, our mutual friends.
So Jose, the guy that wrote Weiss, isn't the Jose?
No. I'm talking about Die and Akuma.
Got it.
Yeah, they had a rap group called Scriptures of the Sacred, they were like named Verbal J and Coconut at first, and they would call like the Ruka roll call on the beat or whatever, Power 106, Baker Boys. They'd win us like tickets, and like we would go to shows on the Promenade, and I'd see DJ Rob 1 DJing and catching tags, and I was like blown away. Like, holy shit, these guys are from CBS. I've seen them all over the magazines. I've seen the Con Art shirts. Express was up when we take the 434. He was up on PCH, what basically was just burned down. Was like that whole area was on fire. There was a hotel. They shot Commando there, I think. And he had a rooftop, and he had like the 10 freeway, like he had bombs everywhere and characters, and like Express was like a big influence to me. And like even till the day he passed away, I would see him out, and I'd be like, I'd introduce him to my wife, and I'd be like, this is the guy. This is one of the reasons I started graffiti was because of this man right here. So, when Express passed, like I had paid my homage to him like consistently. So I felt good about that. But back to like meeting like the guys who like became shapeshifters. We would go to Homeboy's house, Ryan's apartment, and we would freestyle all night, drink 40s with Javon, like my football teammates.
What was your favorite 40?
Crazy Horse. I hated beer. It was like, that's all we knew was like 40s of fucking malt liquor. It was like, what was it, like Mickey's, Crazy Horse, oh God, St. Ides. It was terrible. But like you'd like to man up, you'd have to like down the 40. You'd have to drink the whole thing. I was like, oh, this is fucking
that
terrible.
Last part of it, right? The last part of the
terrible.
40 where it was all warm.
I don't think I started learning about good beers until I met this man, and like these homies right here. Like when I was like 20, it was like, oh, here's like, try this. This is like
what was those beers?
Like
St. Pauli's Girl,
yeah, stuff like
Heineken's,
that,
shit like that.
Yeah, like Newcastle, maybe, like
right.
that actual like boutique beers or like
At that time.
Yeah, at that time, yeah, like
this was like early 90s when you were drinking 40s,
yeah,
and then
like
you graduated
94,
to
95, yeah.
what was then good beer. Now
Yeah.
you have craft beers, which are extremely good beers compared to the Heinekens and the St.
Like
Pauli
Belgian
girls.
beers,
Right.
And I'm like, this actually tastes good. Like I thought it was just to get you like drunk, But
Right.
yeah, so we would party at the dude's fucking apartment and drink beer and like rap all night. And then like Mech would come over and he'd bring his XP 1200. And again, all these stories are in my book that I just released. But yeah, he would make beats like right there in front of us. And like, we would go to shows. We would like go to Cypress Hill, and like Cypress Hill was playing with Funk Dubious and House of Pain, which we were big fans of, like a bunch of white boy rappers from the Valley who knew skate. And Yeah, like and we went to go see these shows, and Rage Against the Machine was opening for him. We're like, who's this band? I don't really like rock and roll anymore, but we're like, oh my God, this band like blew our minds. And we were like riding the mosh. We would get out of the mosh pit, jump on stage and jump into the crowd and crowd surf. But yeah, like, so that's kind of how we formulated like this new contingency of shapeshifters. We were all, Circus would come over, Mech was like moving to New York, and like he was like catching throw-ups in like this dude's apartment, and like we were all in black books and shit. And I was just like, I mean, I was like just blown away. I was able to like kick it and know somebody from CBS. You guys were gods.
Real quick, who did Mech put you in Shapeshifters? Or how did that come about?
So like I was just like jocking Mech, you know, and then like because he was with Rob One, like we would go to these shows called Unity, and Bigger B would host them, and Rob would DJ. So we would go see Rob, even in Santa Monica.
And Unity was where?
It was all over. It was like they had one night in Hollywood, they'd have one night in Santa Monica, downtown. I mean, everybody was there. Like Exhibit would be getting drinks next to me, you know, Will.I.Am, Black Eyed Peas. I mean, Old Dirty Bastard. That's when Wu-Tang dropped, and we were just like blown away by Wu-Tang, you know, and like The Box, we would rent all the videos, and Hooligans were on there. And yeah,
so we're talking mid 90s this year.
Yeah,
right?
like early, like 93, 94.
Got it.
Like the heyday, like the golden days of hip hop. Yeah, the golden era. But yeah, so I mean, we would make a pilgrimage all over town in my boy Sean's like little red truck, where we'd hop in the back, and like there's no seatbelts, and we're like in the flatbed of his truck, just like he'd be like hitting corners, we'd fly against the wall. But yeah, so yeah, that's how we would all like gather, like rap. We'd start working on music together, and like Mech introduced me to Circus. He's like, oh, my friend Marcus is coming over. So I expected him to be a black dude, you know, Marcus. Hey, his name's Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, so I met
That's
Circus,
hilarious.
and Circus was like crushing trains with Mech and Big Five back then. And yeah, so I was like, dude, I was like amongst gods to me. Like, you guys were like legends at that point. And yeah, so Circus kind of like took us under his wing, introduced us to AWOL. We would go to shows, you know, Shu McGorth was rapping with them, and Darkleaf, you know, all people we still kick it with now and like do music with now still. But yeah, and then like, so Mech took off to New York, and he asked me, like I asked him if I could come visit. So he brought me out to New York in 96, and I was still a toy. And like, he would introduce me to like Fly D dudes and like that whole thing. And I was just like, you know, like I was just, my dream was to become a member of CBS. But at that point, I was kicking it with Jigs, who would come over to the apartment too. And like Jigs was like basically using me for a ride because I had a car, you know?
Right.
And I had to have a car because I eventually left my parents' apartment in Marina Del Rey because they had moved from Malibu.
You're basically your dad's apartment,
Yeah.
right?
So they moved from Malibu to like Venice, Marina Del Rey, and I'd have to like get to Santa Monica High School, and things got so bad, but like I got to the point where I got bigger, you know, I was like 17 at that point. So one day, like my stepmom was like coked out or something, 10 in the morning, started ripping the posters off my wall. You're a wigger, you know, and like just fucking eyes are red. And like my dad was coaching and teaching at East LA College. And so the police came, like she grabbed, I was like, fuck this, I'm calling the police. I'm fucking sick of this shit.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What year was this? When
Like 94, I would say.
94.
Yeah. And then,
so you were into hip hop.
yeah.
You were already doing graffiti. You were from
Yeah.
Shapeshifters.
I was, no, not yet, but
Not yet.
I was, that was a trajectory.
Got it.
But so my grandma eventually, like, yeah, because my stepmom had called cops on my dad and like put him in jail just because he didn't give her money or something. She would like slap her face and like fucking scrape her face. And I knew I was next. She was about to do it to me. So this time I grabbed the phone. I was like, fuck you. I'm calling the cops this time. And then like eventually like she ripped the phone out of my hand and did the same shit. Started like slapping herself. You're going to jail. You're going to jail, you little fucker. And like started scratching her face. And like, I was like, I had enough. You know, this shit was like bonkers.
So she would set it up so that it looked like she was getting abused by people.
By me. Yeah.
But
my dad. Yeah.
But she was the one that was abusing herself. Was your dad... Was he? I mean, I know he put hands on you. Did he put hands on her? Was that
no? Like I think their animosity towards each other. Like I would just try to hide because they would they would both like fucking get into it and then turn to me.
Right.
I was like the scapegoat.
Right.
So like at this point, like I just had enough. My dad had to like come back from like teaching classes at East LA, even though like he was a functional drunk. Like he would drive to fucking work with a 22 of Budweiser in his lap. Even when I was like a little kid, even when I was like 10 years old.
Right.
And so this time, like the cops came and they took one look at her and like her eyes were red. She was foaming at the mouth, basically. And they were like, you're going to jail, lady. Like, you need to shut the fuck up. Like, we believe him. And so my grandmother came and rescued me, got me a car, you know, got me my first like ATM card and taught me how to use it and took me to her house. And this was when the earthquake happened. So like half of the house had collapsed, like the chimney fell over. So my room had no wall. It was just like plastic. So like I had a car and then Jigs was like, yo, bro, like, here, let's go to Motor Yard. Let's go to the Valley. Let's go to Budweiser to paint freights. And I was super toy. Just started painting, you know, but he showed me the ropes and he was basically using me for that ride. But like at the same time, like
pretty typical thing.
Yeah, I was learning from him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of took me under his wing, but he was pretty bipolar. And was
he at that time? I mean, I know Jigs. I don't know where he's at right now. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah.
Jigs, I know that he spent a lot of time on the streets.
Yeah.
At that time, was he a street kid?
He actually came from a pretty decent family in Santa Monica, 32nd Street. That's why Josh wrote 132. Right. Yeah, he had an older brother that did graffiti. Yeah, Josh was a dope writer. We're still homies. And yeah, Jigs was just, he had got jumped by the NSAs bad at uni. So a lot of people think that affected like his demeanor, his psychology. Like, I mean, he was like a wounded puppy. So he was just
Why did he get jumped? Do you know? Do you remember?
mean, he was like hanging out with NSA and like, he was like the tagger, obviously. And I don't know, man, like back then, like tag banging was a thing. It was like real prevalent. And like whatever happened, like I think he was like hanging out with Sawtelle and NSA and something just popped and like they beat the shit out of him. Like he probably had like brain damage from it. So he was like real snappy. And like 1 minute he'd be like super cool. Next minute he'd flip super bipolar. But like when I started getting good or like better, you know, like everything I did, he'd be like, don't do that. Like that looks like something I would do, you know, like if I did a 3D letter, he'd be like, oh, you bit that from me. So taught me the rules of graffiti, you know, and taught me how to take photos of graffiti, which became a passion of mine. But yeah, like, I mean, he also stunted my growth because everything creative I did, he'd be like, yo, fuck that. Like, that kind of looks like something I did, blah, you know?
So he would kind of nurture you, but also...
He was abusive too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, another abusive relationship. But,
right.
I mean, he showed me the ropes. Circus brought us into like the new iteration of Shapeshifters, where we would hook up and we'd talk on the phone all night. We'd rap with Search at my apartment in Venice after high school. And all the AOBs would come over because I had a friend from high school who started the Race Riot and he got into AOB.
And the Race Riot, you already mentioned it twice. The Race Riot, was that between blacks and Mexicans?
Yeah. Because my friend's sweet. And I put all this in my book. All these stories are in my book. But
what's your book called?
It's called From Negatives to Positives, and it's like a play on the word negatives, like from film negatives, photo negatives, because I took all my photos back then with 35 millimeter. And like all the positives that came out of hip hop and graffiti for me, you know, I wouldn't be doing what I do now. Like basically my passions became my career, you know, so I got lucky with that.
Right.
But yeah, then Circus, yeah, he brought us around and like we all started like, you know, just like chatting like daily and like doing music together. And then AWOL was like, yo, you want to get on a track we're doing for the 3-Eyed Cows EP? Like he put out a cassette called 3-Eyed Cows and he asked me to be on it. Scriptures of the Sacred, Jose and Eduardo and Pablo became the Chainsmokers. And so we did a song called The Broken Chain Shifters, and Gel Rock was on the album, like Elements, a bunch of the homies, like Abstract Rude. And then so basically, like I took that as like an invitation to like start like pushing Shapeshifters, which I think that was premature. You know, it's like when you're hanging out with CBS and you want to catch CBS tags, but you're still on probation. You're like, no, you can't do that yet. You know,
Yeah, you didn't get the official sign off.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But eventually, yeah, we became the Shapeshifters, and yeah, we did like Rob One came into the fold because he like kind of took me under his wing after Jigs.
Let's tell everybody who were the original Shapeshifters.
Yeah.
Because people might not know, because there's the second iteration of the Shapeshifters. But who were the originals? There's Rob.
There was Rob, Realm from KSN, Sir. And like these guys are still around. Like I saw them at the
Perk, right?
Perk, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah, I saw these guys at the Coliseum, like
Right.
Perk. I saw Realm, Sir. Like it was crazy. It was like a reunion of the original Shapeshifters, but they were all graffiti writers. Rob One, Mech, So Fly, and CBS. So that was the original crew, and they did a little EP. I still have photos. Like Realm did the original art for the cover, so gotcha. I still have photos of that. And like the first tape was called "Remember My Face," I believe. But the songs were dope. You know, we were like amazed because we were fans of Ultramagnetic MCs, and they were kind of on that spacey like East Coast hip hop tip. You know. But Circus was like such a character, you know, and he like got us into conspiracy theories and, you know, like space and just like funky shit. So that's what we would rap about.
And then at this whole time, I know your mom passed away in, what was
like
that, the 80s?
83, yeah, something like that.
When you were super young.
Yeah, 6.
And then I know that your dad passed away at some point. What year was that?
It must have been like 96, I think. Yeah, must have been like 19 right before I got into CBS. I still had a connection to my stepmother, unfortunately, because my dad became homeless. Yeah, like eventually at East LA College, you know, figured it out. He was constantly drunk. Yeah. So he got fired. And like I would find him on the beach in Malibu under an old apartment, you know, like sleeping on the beach. And we got to the point where you knew he was going to die. And like I would go look for him with my girlfriend at the time, Laura, who just passed away of cancer. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, shit, cancer. But we went to go like look for my dad because he was sick and dying, and he was like living on the beach, homeless. And so first place we checked was the liquor stores, and first liquor store we went into across the street on PCH was like, yeah, he was in here. He tried to steal like a 6-pack of beer or like a 22 or something. And they're like, yeah, we just kicked him out. We didn't want to call the cops. We've known him for years, you know? Right. And so,
did he grow up in Malibu? Like that was his like home turf?
He grew up in Pacoima.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he grew up in Pacoima. He went to San Fernando High School with Richie Valens.
Wow.
Yeah, so which was dope because he grew up playing football with all black and Mexican dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was even named after a black football player, running back on his college team. Yeah, but so he I grew up around, you know, like a lot of Mexican families, black families. I would go to East LA with him a bunch, you know. So I was a kid. They're like, "Oh, you're Coach Smith's son," you know. So right. That was like a rite of passage. And like I would go to the football games. I'd be in the locker room. I'd be on the basketball court, in the weight room. He was a swim coach. I mean, phenomenal athlete, but just, you know, he had his demons.
Right.
And yeah, so finally it came to fruition. And he was on his deathbed, and I was living in Venice, like in the Duke Alley.
And he's on his deathbed because of alcoholism?
Oh, yeah. Liver failure. Like, I mean, it was just, he was bad. So I was living in Venice at the time. I was, I just moved out of the apartment. I was living with that dude, Sweet. And, that's when Search and those guys were kicking it with me. And I moved to a little house, a duplex.
Going back a little bit to that time period, I remember hearing, I believe some of those guys, the AOBs, didn't they jack you?
Well,
right?
Getting into that story,
I'm just asking because your book's called From Negative to Positive. So I'm just trying to kind of get a glimpse into your childhood and your early teen years that led you to be the person that you are, because a lot of who we become is based off of our formative years.
For sure,
right?
for sure. And you know better than anyone. You've been through it too.
Yeah.
And I respect you a lot because you're able to vent and talk about it. Like, you're not bashful about it or ashamed about it. You're like, this is what happened to me and this is what made me who I became, and I can't be stopped at anything I do, you do, because these things molded us, and we're like, fuck that. We're not going to treat our kids like that, you know?
So your dad's on his deathbed.
Yeah, and I was living with that dude.
Feel?
It was terrible. I was living with that dude, Sweet, and he had tried to rob me. He was and that's when Circus and Mech and Life Rexall would come over, and I had turntables, and we would DJ all night and rap. And that dude, Sweet, tried to forge one of my checks. And some chick he did dirty, told me oh, he's robbing you. He's trying to jack you. So I got my own place. And, I moved right down the street. Luckily I found a place, and,
Santa Monica.
Venice. This is all Venice. Yeah.
Got it.
And I didn't realize it was the infamous Duke Alley. So it was the Venice 13, hood, and I lived next to suicidal tendencies. And actors and film producers, and I had a little wall there I was able to paint, which unfortunately, in hindsight, it was Evidence and Express, who had a crew called FX, and I went over there.
Not the FX from New York.
No. Yeah, the local FX.
Right.
But yeah, so I asked the owner, I was like, can I paint the wall? And this is at my new house. And he was like, yeah, go ahead. And so I'm still painting that wall to this day. But
that's that same wall, really?
Yeah, where
wow.
I just did the Sponto piece.
Rose, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
6 in Flower Court. But yeah, that's it was Express and Vein, Evidence from Dilated Peoples, who had that wall first.
Interesting.
Yeah. So at that point, I was living in this house. I moved out of the apartment, lived in this house. I had a roommate, and then Ludacris from Shapeshifters became my other roommate. And that's when we found my dad, took him into the house, and I was like, hey, this is what I'm into now. I would show him my photo albums of graffiti. He's like, oh, we came to a consensus, this is actually pretty dope, Mm-hmm. He was like, wow, this is actually very cool. And we got to bond, but he was on his deathbed, and
How old was he at this time?
He was 52.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was young. 19. Yeah, and
my age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and one night, my girlfriend and I came back, and he had raided my roommate's room and found
your dad did.
Yeah, found his cabinet of booze, passed out drunk, butt naked on the floor, pissed himself. And, we had to clean him off, put him on the couch, cover him up. I mean, it was shameful. It was terrible. But at that point, I knew he was about to go. And we played football in the alley. This is the first time he actually played catch with me, which sucked because I looked up to him. He was a great athlete, but
were you at Santa Monica High School? You were on the football team.
Yeah. And
you were trying to kind of chase his ghost
legacy.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I love playing football, and
right.
And we kind of have that structure in CBS too. You have a coach, which is the leader of the crew. You have your GMs, which are the underbosses almost, and you have your own little cliques, the offense and the defense,
Right.
Yeah, it's very structured and regulated. But yeah, so Yeah, like he was passing away, and I was like painting in the alleys right there, so he got to see all that stuff. And yeah, like he had came to one of my football practices in high school, and like tried to like help coach, and everybody was like kind of like laughing, like they loved him. He was like the bubbly drunk, you know, and everybody was like kind of like laughing about like, oh, there's Coach Smith, and like they all knew he was drunk, but whatever. It was funny. We were all homies. Which is crazy because like 6 of those people had passed away on that football team.
Right.
Yeah. But at this point, so he finally, my stepmother came to pick him up from my house, and he took him to a hotel or whatever, a motel, like on like Wilshire, and put him on the bed, and he just like rolled over on the floor, turned blue, and he was gone like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Liver like failed. And like, yeah, so like right after staying with me, like he was gone. And so, and like I was forced to deal with her, which like I didn't want to. I hated her because also another thing, when I turned 18 and my mom, when she died, had left me some money, and somehow they broke into a locked account that was supposed to be for my college tuition, and they stole it. So when I turned 18, they're like, oh, we got bad news.
Yeah.
We accidentally stole your college tuition.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
We ran into it and pillaged it and plundered it.
My grandma was skeptical. She was like, yeah, that's how they got that BMW. You guys went to Australia and Fiji. I was like, oh, so I paid for it, you know? Yeah. So I had to deal with her, and like she went into an open casket. And I was like, I don't want to remember him like that, you know, and went against my wishes. And, years later, like just to, you know, piggyback on that, like years later, I was probably like 25, almost like 30, maybe even 30. And I couldn't get credit cards. I couldn't get credit, which was crazy because I was living on my own since like 19.
Yeah.
And so I do a credit check, and her name is all over my fucking credit, like Margaret Smith, with her address in Montebello. And I was like, what the fuck? And she had opened like 5 different accounts under my name, under my social. Yeah. Yeah. So like like cell phones, like just all kinds of fucking, you know, expenses under my name. So yeah, I had to like confront her about that. And like, dude, that was a whole fucking other story.
This is your life from when your mom, tell me a little bit about your mom. Do you remember a good amount of it? I mean, you were born in what, 76?
Yeah.
So your mom passed away when you were 7.
Yeah.
Did you have a good relationship with her?
Oh, she was the best. Everybody loved her. Like she was very nurturing, like loving, like right. Put me on a pedestal. Like, I mean, that's why it was such a contrast, so shocking, because I went from that, like she was very hippie, like beautiful model. Like my dad did good with her, but he had cheated on her at college with my stepmom.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which is even crazier. So I had to go live with the woman that he basically got divorced with my mom over.
Right.
Yeah, but like, yeah, everybody loved her. Like when she died, it like just destroyed that side of the family. My grandma had lost her husband, you know, before I was born. So like losing her eldest daughter, who was like the matriarch of our family, just turned that family fucking nuts too.
Yeah.
I don't even like the only surviving members of that family is like my uncle, and I have nothing to do with them, you know.
And your grandma that looked after you a whole bunch, was that your dad's?
My mom's mom. I don't know my dad's side of the family. They all lived in like Arizona, you know, like I hate to say it, but kind of white trash, you know. Right. But
and so your mom, so your grandma kind of took you under her wing and was like your surrogate mom.
For
a good portion of your life.
Yeah, she would call me. She would like call me her son. Like,
right.
Like, So like she gave me actually a good foundation.
Right.
You know, like the one steady foundation on a house of cards.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember that your grandma, she lived in nice houses. Like she lived up in Woodland Hills, and I remember she lived in Marina. How did she?
No, she lived in Woodland Hills. We had like my grandfather.
She didn't live in the Marina or Santa Monica or something like that?
Eventually,
right?
But yeah, my grandfather came here with her from Illinois via Ohio or backwards, whatever.
Right.
They moved here in this, like, I think the 50s, moved to Los Angeles because he worked for Rocketdyne, and he was an aerodynamic engineer. Right. And so like they were building like the first, Apollo spaceships or whatever in Woodland Hills. So moved the family to Woodland Hills, built one of the first houses where you've been to. You almost wanted to buy the house. We would have CBS parties there, meetings, like pool parties, barbecues, DJs. So she had this beautiful house on the hill that my grandfather built. And, it was a huge home. It was a 5 bedroom house, and it was like for the whole family. But like, my other aunt died of cancer. Like my mom was gone. I was out of the house. So it was just her maintaining this big house. So eventually, like my uncle, like convinced her to sell the house, which in hindsight, I'm just like so bummed about, because now that house is worth like $2 million. She sold it for $400,000, like overlooking Woodland Hills, pool, 2 stories, like beautiful. Like the whole wall was just 4 windows, on each side. It was dope. It was super cool. And like, I have really good memories of that house. But the one bad memory I have is my uncle waking me up at 6 in the morning. Your mom is dead, like traumatic. But I mean, it's a shame that like our family's house is gone, but that's the new Los Angeles we live in.
Right. And then, so all this stuff happens to you between the ages of 7 years old until you're about 19 years old.
Yeah.
Tell us about 1987, right?
Yeah.
You finally made it and climbed up the ladder to get into CBS Crew.
Yeah.
How did that feel to ascend into something that you had been looking at for so many years?
Yeah, well, at first it started again back to Jigs. He got into TPS, and that was like a big West Side crew. And I was like, I looked up to them too, because they were like the gods of the West Side. Coffee, he's still a fucking legend. JoJo, now he's in CBS. And like, dude, these guys are like fucking adults. I'm like a scrawny kid, and like they're just like fucking rock stars of graffiti. And then you had like Tricks, Gotcha, a bunch of those dudes, and like they were going out bombing, and like I would go out with Jigs, and like it definitely wasn't good enough to get into TPS at that time, but I would go to house parties with them. We'd all rap, and like JoJo and Coffee would bring out all their photos, and like they'd have like little magazines, and like, dude, what they were doing back then is like still like holds up to this day, like fucking amazing graffiti. Right. And like JoJo was like so hip hop and from Philly, big fucking monster dude, like fucking, and but like I wasn't good enough, and this was like 95, 96, but I was like learning a lot from like watching them and taking photos of them. And then like, so like I was like looked over at that point, but like I got into something even bigger, which became, CBS for me, because Rob One was like, he just saw my passion, and he was into hip hop and graffiti too, obviously. And he was just like, I brought him back around to Shapeshifters, and he would just take me to go paint. He always had like little understudies, like DJ Dust, like different DJs, 5-star. He always had like the younger, like understudy kids. He liked to like hone people and take them under his wing, and he took me under his wing. So it went from like, oh, hey, I'm Bleek. Like you don't remember me like fucking 10 times in a row, you know how that goes. Yeah. And then to finally like, I'm going to bring you around the crew. And the first crew meeting I went to was 97 at Trent's house, the CBS pad. And Anger was there, Cisco, Trent, Link, Az, Mirror, even Revoke was there. Simple, Sandman, Pure. I mean, I could go down the list, obviously. Axis. And like, these are grown men, and like, I'm still like in my teens, and I'm skinny as fuck. I couldn't gain weight until I was like 25. Actually, I didn't gain weight, but, we all bonded, and like, put me on probation because Rob really saw something in me. He knew I had the wherewithal and the passion, and like, really wanted to push CBS. So like the first couple meetings, the first meeting was contentious because like I brought up like some stupid hypothesis. Anger and Tyron like put me in check. Like, you ain't in the crew yet. Like, what are you bringing up suggestions for? But I was like,
I remember that.
yeah, I was like getting a little too big for my britches, but like that brought me down to earth. But I was just so passionate about it. Like I was like, oh, like I'm already like down with the crew, But yeah, so that brought me back down to earth, and I was put on probation. And
How long? I don't remember, but how long did it take you to get into the crew?
only a few months, because like we had a meeting at Waddles, and like it was brought up. Rob was just really pushing hard to bring me in. So yeah, this meeting at Waddles Park in '97, we're walking down the hill after having a meeting, which everybody was at, and Aura, who was from CBS at the time, gave me a marker, a pilot, and he was like, we're catching tags like at the bottom of the hill with NATO. And then fucking we hear sirens, and it's undercover police like on Curson, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? Like come over, like, so they run up on us, hem us up. And like we had caught like Bleek, Aura, NATO tags on like a drainage.
Were you in the
ditch.
crew at this point? Or?
No. So yeah, like I went to jail for catching a fucking tag on a drainage ditch, and fuck, NATO and I went to jail
On the curb, you mean?
Yeah, on the curb.
Right?
Yeah. And over a fucking tag. Now dudes, like I literally passed dudes painting like a fucking bombing a wall at 10 in the morning on the way here. Yep. Like just broad daylight, not giving a fuck. But so I went to jail, and then Rob comes and bails me out in NATO's like pissed. He like puts all the fucking onus on me. He like, I was the scapegoat because he got busted, but
Right.
we were catching tags together, whatever.
But you guys were catching tags and nobody was looking out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So yeah, we both got hemmed up, went to jail. Rob bailed me out, and it so happened to be the 5th anniversary of when Skate passed away. Mm-hmm. So Rob's like, well, we have another thing to do tonight. We're going to Woodman Yard where Skate passed away. It's the 5-year anniversary. We're all getting together, the whole crew. We're going to like put candles on the, do a prayer, put candles on the train tracks, remember Skate. So we get to the valley, and I still have footage from Rob's camera where I'm like holding up like the tickets, like for graffiti. And yeah, I roll up and like, I look in the Suburban and it's Trend driving, like fucking Crooks in the car, Link, Anger.
Crook was there?
No, yeah, Crook was there. Yeah,
Really?
Crook was there. Yeah, he's in the footage, and Mirror, and they're bumping fucking Biggie, Juicy, and I'm like, dude, this is so fucking dope, I'm like creaming in my drawers, and I'm like, dude, this is like the fucking artist, like fucking group of dudes, and like this is so fucking rad. And even when I was at Trent's house, like it was a pool party, and like everybody's yoked out in tattoos, like fucking Eris, and like all these like fucking scary looking motherfuckers. And like, again, I was like still like a scrawny kid, no tattoos or whatever. But, I was like piecing, and like they respected it. So we went to Woodman. We all walked down the tracks together, holding hands, singing Kumbaya. And we all put flowers down and candles, do a prayer for Skate, like right where he passed away, right where he died, where Trent and Sandman were picking up pieces of his clothes and other things. And yeah, like fucking Rob brought it up again. He's like, yo, I want this dude down with CBS, and Mirror backed me. So did Anger. And the only person who had
But I wasn't there, I don't think.
You were there. You were definitely
at the tracks?
Yeah, you were at the tracks.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the only person who had a problem with me was NATO because we just got busted. But everybody else backed me, and even to this day, like Posh and Aura, like, oh yeah, we were kind of like partied out, so like that's why we signed off on you. And I was like, cool. So that's how I got into CBS in '97. Nice. And that was June 23rd, 1997. I still have a rock from the train tracks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Fast forward.
Well, no, fast forward. I appreciate you, telling us your story about the abuse that you went through. I know that's a tough thing to talk about. And like you had said, I'm an open book when it comes to that, because I feel like talking to people, talking about your story helps other people, and it's a cathartic thing for not only the person talking about it, but it helps out other people deal with their issues that they had, because everybody's come from a tough situation. Not everybody had a peachy, rosy fucking upbringing. But so 1997 kicks off and you're from the crew. What are some of the, key experiences that you went through, in the first few years of being from the crew?
Well, it started pretty crazy because I was on probation. I get into CBS, I'm on a 2-year probation where you can't buy spray paint, you can't carry a marker. So that fucking sucked. And I get into the most notorious graffiti crew in the world, and I'm not allowed to do graffiti, but fuck that. I live day to day. And I was like, okay, that's not going to deter me at all, whatever. So Posh, Ole, and Aura, those guys, that's how we do at CBS meetings. We connect, we exchange digits, and we're like, yo, let's go paint. So we go to Motor Yard, we do a production in the tunnel, fucking Motor Bob's there. We painted in the shitty.
Who's Motor Bob?
Yeah, he was a homeless dude, a vagrant that lived in the tunnels of Motor Yard, which
Right.
now the expo line goes to Santa Monica through,
Right.
And so he lived in the tunnels, and he defecated in the tunnels, and he smelled, foul, obviously, and he kind of lived in a pile of shit. So people would walk through the tunnels and catch tags above him. And this is back in the day when there wasn't many homeless.
Yeah.
There was the one dude, in Malibu, there was Malibu Joe, and in West LA, there was Motor Bob. It wasn't tents everywhere. There was one fucking tent, and it was in Motor Yard tunnel.
Right.
So we painted across from there because we knew it was going to run inside the tunnel. Did a production. Colt 45 comes through, and I met him at a party a couple months previous, and he wasn't from TKO or anything back then. He was from EM. And which was a tag banging crew and Palms.
West Side, right?
Yeah, Palms. Yeah. And he actually kind of side busted into our pieces. And Posh was like, yo, I'm doing a CBS right here. He's like, I don't give a fuck. So he did I still have a photo of it, but we all became good homies back, after that. But it was just crazy because in hindsight, we're painting across from Motor Bob, and Colt 45 walks in, legend in the graffiti game. And so we do a production there, and we're like, okay, let's do another one. And we start painting at the top, me and Rob one, at the top of now the Culver City stairs.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I have a photo in the book. It's a full 2 pages of me and Rob's production. But so we go up there, and we're we do this dope little production. I'm finally from CBS, and as we're walking down the hill, because back then there was no Culver City stairs, there was no amphitheater or whatever's up there now. It was just you had to park in a cul-de-sac and traverse through the bushes to get up to this old military barracks.
Right.
Dilapidated military barracks that we would paint all the walls. And it was really the TPS yard at the time. Jigs and JoJo showed me the yard. So I took Rob up there. And as we're walking down, Rob had left, I have a crate of paint, and Culver City PD rolls up on me, and they're like, what are you doing? Well, you're a vandal, fucking throw me on the hood of my car, grab me by the neck, choke me out. And luckily, I don't know what happened. They looked me up. I had no priors, and my probation didn't pop up on their computer, so they let me go. So we got away with that. And then Posh and Ole were yo, and Rob were let's do a big production in San Diego, because we were going to the B-Boy Summit, and we found all the yards down there. Yeah, we were going to the B-Boy Summit in 96, 97, and we found all the dope yards because some of the homies we met at the B-Boy Summit told us where to look. So we would drive through.
They were all in the All the yards down there were down in the washes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, under the
Kind of like
bridges.
the LA River of San Diego.
Yeah, so Phobia from NR had like told Jigs like where to look. Wars, those guys.
Right.
And so I would drive. Jigs would like hop over the hill, look under the freeway, and like it would take a couple tries, and like finally he was like, "Oh shit, yeah, I found it." Like these dope ass burners peeping through the bushes. So we started painting down there a lot. Me and Rob would go down there like every other weekend. We would drive to San Diego to paint. I mean, it was like a fucking gallery of fucking like, you'd have dudes from like Minnesota. You had like Tits Crew. You had AWR, MSK. So it was like, okay, well, let's make a CBS presence down here, and you had obviously the local crews, but I mean, I have photos in my book again, but it was mind boggling.
It was an animal production.
Yeah, we
everybody did right. Everybody did like
George of the Jungle.
George, was that what it was?
Yeah,
because everybody had like tiger stripes, and cheetah fucking prints, and all that zebras. And
that whole I talk about that whole story in my book, and it was like crazy stories. We went down there like 3 weekends in a row, and Posh had the idea like, hey, I want to do this whole fucking production, like the whole fucking wall,
top to bottom,
end to end, and we're like, oh, that's a little ambitious. But yeah, so we went down there progressively like 3 weekends in a row to like knock it out. The third weekend happened, and Rob One's filming all this shit. We brought drugs with us too.
Meaning the writer drugs.
Drug.
Drug.
Yeah, we weren't doing drugs back then.
You weren't doing drugs.
No. I mean, they were smoking weed, but yeah, we brought Drug, who was from CBS, or just was getting into CBS with us. We brought Jigs. We all painted, but we did the production. And Rob was filming it, but the final day, I mean, it was real cutty because you had to pull up, hop out the car because it was like kind of off ramp going to like SeaWorld. And so we'd have to unload like quick, like lights, the emergency lights blink in, like here's a crate, here's a gallon of paint, here's another gallon, here's the rollers, here's the ladders, quick. And that last day, like, somebody called the cops, and we're like finishing this beautiful fucking production, like animal skin themed pieces. And cops roll in, and we're like, fuck, dude, like our last day, like we're done, like the shit's like popping, it looks tits. And the cops were like amazed. They were like blown away. They're like, oh my God, like you guys did this? And they're like, dude, carry on. And we're like, wow, thanks. Yeah. And then the city came and buffed the yard like monthly for like 3 years and left our production running.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So the end of the 90s are happening. What's going on through that time? What are some of the key things that were happening at the end of the 90s?
Oh yeah, well, that's easy. I had gone to New York a bunch. Yeah, I mean, I started traveling as much as I could. We would all of us with like Gas and like Atlas. We would go on trips to like Phoenix for different jams, and we would perform there, Shapeshifters. Right. And so we would go to Mexico, Tijuana, San Francisco. Anger would drive a bunch. Rob would drive. I would drive. And then I started going to New York. The first time we went to New York, it was me, Rob One, Posh, DJ Dusk, and we stayed with Mech, and we went to the B-Boy Summits. Or no, the anniversary for Rocksteady Crew.
Got it.
And Brett Webb was there, Art Crimes. And so we started doing graffiti out there a bunch. We painted with Fly ID in the Bronx. And that was just like fucking amazing. And that was like the mecca of graffiti, the Bronx. I mean, you had roll down doors with Cope. Let's not bring up that story. The Melrose Alleys. But so then you had pieces by Tracy 168 still running. Like just like you come down like the elevated line and you look and you're like, oh, that's Tracy. And then you'd have like all like the school handball courts painted by FC Crew or Tats. I mean, it was just fucking amazing. It was like you're a mecca. And so I started going to New Jersey. I don't have to tell the whole backstory of that, but I would take the train line down to the Jersey Shore, and I invited Anger one year, and we would see just everything smashed, fucking Nace, Chip, Mayhem, like Murs, Rhyme, Chemos. And I was like, dude, I have to meet these guys. Everything was like just the dopest pieces you've ever seen done illegally, like full like productions along the train lines and off the freeways. And I was like, dude, I got to meet Nace. I'd seen him in magazines. So I knew he was like, he painted with Rhyme, and he was like Cause's understudy for the most part. It was always like Cause Nace. And so like luckily, Topper, who we rap with Shapeshifters from Lords, he was in New York at the same time with me and with Brett Webb, and they're like, oh yeah, there's this graffiti jam on the Chelsea Pier, like come through tomorrow, like a bunch of writers are going to be there. And I had like Shapeshifter pressings, records, photo albums, acetates of our new like 2012 record. So I'm on like the pier, like with like black books and photo albums and like et cetera. And shit, there's Nace and Chip, and it's Nace and Chip, me and Topper, and we're all just, shooting the shit, and we exchange phone numbers. And I'm super apprehensive to call fucking Nace because he's already like a god. Right. It's like not to jock, but when you meet Risk for the first time, you're like, oh dude, this is like a god of graffiti, like this is why I started doing graffiti. Or when you meet Express. Yeah, so once I had met Nace and Chip at the Chelsea Piers with Topper, Brett Webb, Nace gave me his phone number to call him to hook up, physical before cell phone time. So I was super apprehensive to call him because I was nervous. Like, this guy is like a legend in my book at that point. And like I had seen the work they'd done on the freeways and along the New Jersey Pat train line. And I was just like, dude, these guys are just on another level. And we were already on a level, but Nace was just like on a separate plateau at that point. Like I would say he was the best graffiti writer in the world at that time, in my opinion. And so I called him, and he was so fucking cordial and cool and just inviting. And he was like, yeah, like, hop the train. Hey, yo, gent, hop the train line, hop the path to Jersey City, and we'll swoop you up. And I was like, dope. Yeah, cool. So I'm like partying like at the Jersey Shore, going to bars, hanging out with surfers, shooting pool.
And you were in Jersey because you were dating Steph at the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A girl I met at LMU, who had introduced me to a bunch of her friends, and one of them became Avatar, which was, producer and did the score for the Can't Be Stopped movie.
Rest in peace, Avatar.
Rest in peace, and like my rap partner as well. So anyways, I was hanging out at the Jersey Shore with her, and then I was like, fuck, time to go do graffiti. That's my life. It's like, party and then go do graffiti. And so I get off the train. He's waiting there with Chip in his Nissan Maxima, baby blue Nissan Maxima, which was ironic because I had a Maxima in high school. So I was like, cool. So we go to we go to Home Depot, grab bucket paint, and they take me along the train lines where the train goes into New York City from Jersey, and we roll out pieces, and we, came out fucking dope. And Nace was like, "Ah, damn, you actually burned me." And I was like, "Fuck, nah." he didn't like what he did because he had some janky silvers and it didn't cover very well. But so that was the beginning of a long friendship with those guys. And eventually it became a thing for us to hook up in Jersey, paint. I'd go down to the shore. The following year, Anger came out to hang out with us, check out the shore, go see Metallica and Slayer. at Giant Stadium in New Jersey at the Meadowlands. And then we all hooked up and painted. We painted the Jersey Hall of Fame. We did like some graffiti on the train lines, and yeah, man, we went to like the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, and eventually
that was Randall's Island Cody, right?
Yeah. That's a funny story because actually
2000
2000
was that the Warp Tour?
The Warp Tour, which that's a funny story because I mean maybe it was we were drinking too many beers in the sun, but I got photos of that in my book as well. But I mean, I just got so burnt out from all like the punk pop music. I mean, I was into punk. I love Misfits and, like Iggy Pop and shit like that. But when it came to like the Warp Tour and you had like more punk pop groups like Green Day. I wasn't into that. Nah. Yeah, that was a little too like soft punk for me. But then Jurassic 5 performed. And and I was all like just that whole day like, oh, I'm over it. Like I want to go. Like I'm tired of being here. And like, I was dubbed Randall's Island Cody because it was on Randall's Island because I was being a bummer. Like my attention span is like, I got to go do the next. Okay, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And so that was a long-standing joke for Anger. And but then Jurassic 5 was there and Charlie Tuna spotted me and Anger in the crowd and he's like, yo, what's up, CBS in the house, and then like he got a shirt, a Jurassic 5 shirt, and Nace took us to the Bronx, we took photos. We went on a tour and saw all the FX walls. Like I still got a photo of him with his J5 shirt. So that became like a contingency with Mayhem. I got into Mayhem, Anger got into Mayhem, and we invited them into CBS.
So how did that, talk about that a little bit, where when you called me or when I talked to you about Mayhem, where was I?
I think this was before you went on vacation, right?
I was locked up in the county jail.
Yeah.
And we talked for a little bit. I was facing doing a year in my first bit in prison, and you had talked about bringing those dudes onto the crew.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, what Ace was doing, and he was painting with Zephyr, and like, dudes we, looked up to. What he was doing was like transcending. He was doing full color masterpiece burners on trains and like along the train tracks, like shit that looked like a postcard, like in a gallery. Like, I mean, it was amazing. And, so, I mean, I was a little, hesitant, nervous to ask him to get to our crew, CBS. And but I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it and ask him. And he was like, yo, bro, we'd be honored. I was like, yeah, if you and Chip want to get on CBS and we'll get on Mayhem. And he was like, bro, we would be honored. He's like, we would look at those Can Control magazines and that big photo of the CBS guys with the big blockbuster CBS. We like all looked up to that. We were all envious, like how fucking like hard that looked. And I was like, damn, really? Like epiphany, poof. Like we have made our like big impact on the world. They got into CBS, and then shortly after, Nace died. He was killed by a drunk driver at Scribble Jam going to paint freights. Like they were hit head on by a drunk driver, and ironically, Nace was he was straight edge. So was Chip. So they didn't drink, didn't do drugs. Like almost like vegetarian. Which is weird to me because a lot of graffiti artists are vegetarians or vegans, and
that's what you've gathered.
And I'm like, we inhale spray paint all day around like dudes who smoke weed and drink. But I mean, he was like the nicest guy I've ever met, like, and most hospitable, and took me into his life, took me into his family's life, and then like a week later, I was at his funeral and still had spray paint under his fingernails. And that was a devastating time for me. But, I met Sace at his funeral, and Sace invited me into the city to stay with him. And, I was meeting Mers from Cincinnati who lived in Brooklyn. So, those became my brothers. And like I ended up staying with Murs like every summer in New York, then now that Nace was gone. And then, we would still go out and paint the freeways like with Mets. Yeah, and like Chip and like Murs and Sace was around. And then, fucking Sace succumbed to drug addiction. And like when I met Dash, he was he was already like a rock star. Like Nace would take me to Dash's house with Dash's apartment in the city. And it was like, me, Chip, Nua, Nace, Dash. And they were like, yo, bro, you guys think you get hot chicks in LA? Check out like this gent's Polaroid album. And I'm like going through it, which all like became books and featured in museums now. But you're like, damn, he's got like 3 chicks on him, like doing like lines of coke off dicks. And like,
I just actually, I just watched the documentary Moments Like This Never Last.
Yeah.
I just watched it. I just finished it last night.
Crazy.
Yeah. Interesting documentary.
Yeah. He was a fucking character. But when I met him, he was super humble. Like, he was like, yo, like I would go to his apartment and it was dope, but it was like scummy. Like he painted like punk rock chicks all over the fucking house, like graffiti everywhere. And, but like, he was like, yo, I gotta go find me some Jordans tomorrow in Chinatown. So we'd walk around town. I met his family. And like, even like through Mayhem, I met Nex. Nex came and stayed with me his first time in Los Angeles, coming back from crushing Australia. Chip was like, hey, well, would you mind our homie Nex staying with you? And I was like, yeah, man, like, I'd love to show this dude around. He gets to my house and shows me the photos on his camera, on his digital camera, like of the trains he painted in Australia. And I was like, God damn, he has like 25 fucking like full color pieces, full color trains, like end to end, top to bottoms. And so I took him out when he was here. We painted a bunch. We painted billboards, LA River. I introduced him to Anger, and Anger took him down to Belmont to paint it with like Rygar, and also, which is crazy, he painted with what's homeboy's name who passed away from WCA? Rival, yeah. So Rival and Nex bookend their production at Belmont, which is crazy. Yeah. So
actually you only got to hang out and chill with Nace for maybe 2 years, right before he passed away.
Yeah.
And I remember getting, I think talking to you while I was locked up, and when that happened, and I was actually getting letters from Nace while I was locked up. So that was pretty cool. And I never really got to fully, he was always talking about coming out to LA and hanging out with all of us, but his life was cut short,
Yeah, it's ironic too, because I had like literally, like, again, I hate to beat this to death, but I talk about this in my book. Like I had like an epiphany when I was.
Is there anything that you don't talk about in your book?
Yeah, there's a lot I don't talk about in my book, actually, which you probably know like half the stories. But I had a weird epiphany when I was like staying in Nace's pad, his parents' house. He had like the basement, which was all like dope graffiti shit, like cans of graffiti, like photos, black books. And I just popped in my head. I was like, what if something ever happened to this guy? He's like too good to be true. And like after we painted Clean Trains up in upstate New York, they were going to take me to the airport, and they were getting their tickets to Scribble Jam. And I told him, I was like, man, fuck that. I have a bad feeling about this. I don't know why. I literally told him, like, I was like, I don't think it's a good idea you guys go to Cincinnati, like, because maybe it's like all the driving, cross country. Back then, cars were like,
not cross country. It's
whatever.
It's a couple states away.
Yeah, 10 hours, whatever.
Right.
But cars back then were shittier, not as safe. Like, shit, we didn't have cell phones. I don't know. Like, things were more difficult back then to even like.
There was a process.
Yeah, but he felt obligated because they had a wall set up for him in Cincinnati at Scribble Jam. So yeah, he was like, yeah, I feel obligated. Like, yeah, it's my girl Carla's birthday next week and my mom's birthday. I really don't want to go, but like I've already committed myself.
Right.
So yeah, they bought their bus tickets. I was there, Greyhound. Yeah, it was a Greyhound bus out there, and ironically, they were painting with Jabber. The last piece he did was with Nesm and Jabber, and now I paint with Jabber all the time. He's like one of my best friends. And yeah, Jabber was supposed to be in that car with him too, because he was like, yeah, maybe we'll all go paint.
They were going
Freights.
to hit Freights, right?
Yeah. It was Kern, this dude Scream, and Nesm.
The fake anger.
Yeah. He was writing Anger. Hey, mate, I'm writing Anger. Yeah,
it's not anger.
We're like, bro, no, you have to. This guy's Anger. Like you cannot madden. So, anyways, we're like, just stick to
Shout
Scream.
out to Scream.
Yeah, but like, poor guy, K. Lindo, like fucking, he was a pro skater who had just got into a car accident the year before and shattered like all of his bones in his body, like broke his wrist, his arms, his legs, like. Severed his
This is Scream, right?
Yeah.
Scream, yeah.
Ironically, his name is Scream, and like he severed his vocal cords in the car accident.
Oh wow.
Yeah, kind of like the DOC. So he was already fucked up, and then like this car accident, head on with this drunk driver with driving a van, middle of the day with his daughter in the passenger seat. Fucking kills Nace instantly. Fucking Screams back in the hospital with the same injuries, like fucking refracture, breaks all of his bones. Nesm has blood dripping out of his ear, fracture skull from Japan, so can't go back to Japan. This dude can't go back to like Australia.
No, New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah. He like Decipher. What do we call him?
Kiwi.
Kiwis.
He was a Kiwi.
Yeah. He still hits me up. And then our boy Kern, who was driving, who luckily avoided the head-on collision, but it like hit Nace directly because he swerved.
He was in the driver's seat.
He was in the driver's seat.
He was in the passenger seat.
Kern was driving, and Nace was in the back passenger seat.
Yeah.
So Nate took the brunt of the impact, and he died instantly, or like on the way to the hospital. Right. And Kern obviously had PTSD because he made it out fine. You know, and luckily Chip wasn't there. So I mean, it was just more tragedy. And my friend LeVar was shot in LA. My best friend,
all at the same time,
around the same time. My best friend Sean was in a car accident, got paralyzed the week of 9/11. 9/11 had just happened. I mean, I was like, I was going through a bad breakup. Like I was like pretty like almost like suicidal. Like I had to literally like just go to the beach and just like not meditate, but just like try to get my fucking head together. And then me and you got into it over some other business, and I was getting kicked out of Shapeshifters and like almost getting kicked out of CBS. So I was just like, dude, at a very low point. Like I barely made it out of that.
But you also, I mean, I think part of what we always debated over this, and because we partied a lot.
Oh yeah,
I mean, we drank and fucked around, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you probably had a bit of your dad's blood in you.
Genetics.
Genetics.
Yeah.
Took hold of you, and you definitely had an issue with yourself with substances.
I wouldn't say substances, maybe drinking.
Drinking and
but,
partying. You love to party.
Yeah, it never got out of hand. I mean, I might party hard, but the next day, like if it was time to go to work, I was at work. Never missed a day, never like late. If it was time to paint or like do a session, it's not
but
like
your dad was a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah, but no, I wouldn't call it functioning. I would just like.
Well, that's what you said earlier.
Yeah.
He was a functioning
scraping
alcoholic. I mean, you were a functioning.
And plus, I'm athletic, so it's like it would only go to an extent because like fucking I had to play basketball. It's like just like it's like for us, it's like that's a way to like stay away from drugs is like sweat this hangover out. But yeah, definitely I've had my party times for sure.
Now that you recently had a kid, right?
Yeah.
And you've kind of curbed your ways a little bit.
Oh yeah,
sort
of course,
sense,
of course.
right? Like you don't party like you used
Oh
to.
fuck no,
Yeah.
no man. I'm like Friday night after work. Like dude. If I could be in bed at 10, I'm like good. I'm great with that. Yeah, I'll have a glass of wine, maybe 2, watch a movie. But that's
But not 3.
It depends how good the wine is.
Right.
Yeah, but no, definitely. I'm married now. Yeah, times have changed. And like. But fuck, I had some fucking fun. And I live in LA, and like every night's an event. Like I went to an art show last night. Every night is something else, and it's like, but in the party aspect, yeah, I don't miss. Like, I even stopped by the bar just to say like, what's up to Just last night, and I was with my wife, and the kids were in the car, and I showed him my new baby, and he's like, well, why don't you come in? And me and my wife were like, yeah, that'd be fun, but no, we can't.
You got 2 kids with you. What are you going to do with them?
Yeah, well, Steph, like my stepdaughter would love to, but no, yeah, it's like times have definitely changed. He's a dad of 2, so yeah, of course, our partying gets put to the side, and yeah, it's like I feel like I've done everything. Like I don't need to do any more because I've done it all.
Right. So I wanted to back up a little bit because we're missing a little glimpse in your history and the negatives that happened in your life.
Yeah.
It was early 2000, and one of your mentors, one of the guys that brought you to the crew and taught you a lot, Rob One. I wanted to just go back to that time period. Rob had gotten locked up. I think him and Nato were in a halfway house together.
Yeah.
Rob One was having some issues, and he went and got checked out, and he got diagnosed with cancer.
Yep.
And at that time, you had in the late 90s, early 2000s, you lived at a house, and you had a lot of people living there. I think there was, 7 people living there at once?
Like 6, yeah.
6 or 7.
6-bedroom house,
6, yeah. And Rob One was living with you.
Yeah.
And he was battling cancer at the time. And there was a lot of... Let's go ahead and go back to that time period. Just
what
you were going through with him, and
yeah, for sure.
Be candid.
I will, of course. It started with us living in Venice together. When I was living at that house in Venice, Rob had just got kicked out of his apartment. He had got into a big argument or whatever with his mother, who he was taking care of. And, she ended up in a retirement home. She was much older at that point, probably 77 or something, 78. And then he went to jail, and I don't know, he got into a fight with somebody and got incarcerated for what was it, a month or 2 or something. Mm-hmm. So anyways, he was down on his luck, and I was like, throw him a bone, offered him a place to stay. I was like, yo, anytime you need to sleep on my couch, I'm there for you. And, so he took that as an invite to move in. So next thing you know, he shows up, pulls up in the back with his bags. And I was like, oh shit. Well, at least this is the dude I look up to more, my mentor. We could get a bunch of shit done, I guess it's kind of cool, but he's living on my couch. And then I think Ludacris was living with me at the time. And then Exist moved down from Santa Barbara, and he started staying with us too. So it was it became a clusterfuck. And then at that point, I got robbed. One day we were supposed to go watch Monday Night Football somewhere, and I'm exiting my house, and we live in the duplex with the alley right behind, the infamous Duke Alley. And I think it was some Shoreline Crips, but they pushed me back in the house, shotguns to my face, shotguns to my head. They're looking for drugs, think I'm a drug dealer or whatever. They jacked my car. and take it for a joyride and rob a bank with my car. And so the FBI calls me and they're like, do you want to do this lineup? And like, they bring me in. I'm like, the guys don't want to come out and show their faces. So they end up going to jail, whatever. And we're like, let's get the fuck out of Venice. I mean, dudes were getting like, it was like drive-bys every day. One summer, like 20 people died or some crazy shit or got shots because there was a war between V13 and Culver City and like, Shoreline Crips or whatever, all this going down. Summer like 97. So me, Rob One, Exist, Ludacris, basically all shapeshifters, CBS. We're like, let's look for a place. And that's how we found that house. And so we all started renting the house. My grandmother helped me come up with the down payment because my credit was all fucked up back then. So she co-signed. So basically it was in her name, in my name. And shit just went south. So it's like, it's hard living with friends, and then it's harder living with artists. And then shit got even worse when I allowed Jigs to move in. And like, I knew like back of my head, like this is a bad idea, but he had a lot of cash and dudes weren't paying their rent and it was all falling on me. And I was going to like Santa Monica College and I'm like, dude, what the fuck? How am I supposed to pay for this? So I like ended up taking out like a student loan. And then to make shit worse, Rob.
What were you doing for work at that time?
I think I was like driving, like doing deliveries for like companies, before there was like Uber, whatever. Like, I was like, dropping off paperwork in downtown and like whatever to make ends meet. You put like this satellite thing on the top of your car and, oh, hey, we have a package to deliver here. We have a package to deliver there. Yeah. So, I mean, I was just barely scraping by. I mean, I had like a little money saved up. So I took out a student loan too, like, because dudes were getting hooked on heroin in my house. It went from like smoking weed, recording all night to like dudes are shooting up heroin, And so that.
Not the whole house, just a couple guys.
No, just a couple guys upstairs.
We'll go unnamed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So shit just started getting like grimy and like motherfuckers weren't paying rent and like trying to figure out how to get me out of the equation, even though my name was on the lease. And and then fucking Rob got cancer, and then like he didn't want to help out with rent, and I was like, Rob, like, how do you expect me to handle all this? I'm fucking like 20 years old. And I was like, what, you told me you're going to like start selling your records to make money. Like, and he's like, yo, fuck you. I can't believe you would ask me to like pay money. Like I'm dying of cancer. And like shit just got out of hand. And like, he didn't actually tell us how bad his cancer was. It was always like, oh yeah, it's getting better. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. And then like he got a new girlfriend and she got involved, Lisette. And like, this is when Anger was throwing chicken scratch parties. So like he had like a little warehouse.
End of the 90s,
around the same time. Had a warehouse like off Washington, Mid-City. Yep. Throwing these dope ass like house parties. And like we would perform, DJs, like the Lords would paint outside, Crayola, like Alex Party. We'd have like dudes like Rezik, Shapeshifters, even like Gas. Like we'd have dudes DJing and rapping, and bands like Drunk with Power would perform, Mickey Avalon, Andre Legacy, before they were even Mickey Avalon and Andre Legacy. These epic fucking parties, like just like a clash of, not a clash of cultures, but like just like this fucking pot stew of like the dopest like talented artists and musicians putting out his parties. And Rob One started bringing like this woman Lisette around, who was his new girlfriend. And then like one day I'm like at that house and she like knocks on my window and she's like, and Rob was like real like picky with women and like how he, dealt with his relationships. And she knocks on my window. She's like, hey, Bleek. And I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, hey, do you have that photo you took of me and Rob? Like from the chicken scratch party last night? And I'm like, yeah, like, but he told me not to let you in, like, and she's like, yeah, like, I think he doesn't want to be with me, or he's breaking up with me or whatever. And but this is before cancer started getting worse, and so he became more susceptible to like, you know, just even like walking up and down the stairs, getting out of his room, and like he needed help, and like she just happened to be there to be, you know, one of his, like a crutch for him and like to help him in so many ways. And it got like, shit got so bad, like, you know, like I was negative, like I couldn't pay rent anymore, you know, like I couldn't pay next month's rent, and it's all in my name. And I was like, Rob, dude, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, fucking, I can't do this. Like, I need rent from you. And so he fucking flipped the switch, told me to go fuck myself, slammed the door in my face, kicked Exist in the head. And then like Lisette's like, yeah, well, you can't kick him out. If you kick him out, we'll sue you. And I'm like, bro, what the fuck? Like, I'm 19, 20 years old. Like, I can't be paying everybody's fucking rent. These guys are on junk upstairs. And like, and so I became like a scapegoat, and like Rob got sicker, and she was like, well, he can't stay with me because I have a bunk bed. And I was like, take your fucking ass up to the top bunk and let him sleep on the bottom bunk. And then Rob got jumped at a shapeshifter show, broke his leg. So like shit just got like dire at that point.
Who jumped him?
We were playing a shapeshifter show on Halloween, and right. We were like playing with Tumex. And again, like I had another weird premonition. So me and a couple of the guys didn't go that night because I was like, oh, it's Halloween. Like, I don't want to get a DUI. Like, let's just stay home. Like, we're not even really getting paid for these shows at that point. I mean, like we'd have like $100 each person, each member of the group, because there was 8 of us. So I think we were getting frustrated as a group. You know, I made some bad decisions, and yeah, I got drunk and like slurred my speech on stage. And yeah, I ended up getting kicked out of Shapeshifters, which, I mean, in hindsight, I can't blame, but you know, like, I mean, I'm glad now it happened, because like I ended up doing my own music and like doing film and like different trajectory of my career. But yeah, so Rob had to go live with Lisette. She ended up on the top bunk bed. He got sick. He got so sick at that point, like he was dying, which we'd even know. But we devised a fundraiser for him. You know, it was like me and Exist knew some promoters. Like we had the promoters of the garage. It was called the garage. There you go. We'd have these girls who like had their night at the garage over. Exist knew them. Introduced them to me, and I was like, they're like, yeah, like, well, we have to pay security, we have our own things, but yeah, after that, like, you keep all the money and give it to your friend. And then we did the show fundraiser for Rob. Rob like was like living with Lisette, and he was like, it was kind of like a quasi like surprise type of thing. Like I organized it with like Freestyle Fellowship, Visionaries, Shapeshifters. So I was like promoting it. And then like these bitches fled the city with the money. And Rob was already skeptical. Like, you guys are like, I'm going to collect money at the door. I don't want anybody taking the money, like with my name on the flyer. This is for me. So he was already skeptical, and he was, you know, kind of like being a dick to me about it. And I was like, well, we have to pay the security, and we have to pay blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yo, fuck that. And now in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, he was right about that, because these fucking chicks took the money that was raised. We kept on trying to call him the next day. Like, where are you? Where are you? Nobody had cell phones. So we were like calling, they're fucking leaving voicemails. And like the word was they took the money and went to Hawaii, boned out. And like, I mean, how could you even live with yourself? But that's what happened. And then, yeah, I got blamed for it, and Rob died. And so shit just got like hectic. I got blamed for a lot of shit, like kicking him out. And I'm like, well, where were you guys to help out, you know, financially or whatever? You want to blame me, but you know, like, where was everybody else? I did what I could. I let him live with me in Venice. I let him live in this house 6 months, rent free, took out a loan to pay for this shit. But yeah, so I mean, it was a really rough time, and yeah, and like that was also part of my removal from Shapeshifters, and like almost getting kicked out of CBS. Almost got into a fight with like Swan at Atlas's crib. My boy Sean passed out on Atlas's couch. They spray painted him silver and like shaved his head half off. Yeah, he had to take like a fucking cab home. And like he blamed me for it. I was like, man, that was just a fucking rough time.
Damn, that's fucking nuts.
Yeah, crazy times.
So you had the end of the 90s into the early 2000s, you had a lot of people that passed away. I think Next passed away sometime after that. Yeah. And then,
I wasn't close with Next at that point. Like he got into MSK and he ditched. We know the whole story. He ditched me to go paint with them instead, and like him and Pose, and I was like super fucking pissed.
Right.
Cause like I was like really trying to carry on Nace's legacy with Mayhem. And it's just once Nace died, it like Mayhem like kind of like dispersed to different parts of the country. I mean, people were already living in different parts of the country, like Kansas City, but like at this point, like New Jersey wasn't the hub anymore. Right. You know, that wasn't like, and people who really followed Nace, you know, not like anybody else. They got into Mayhem because of Nace. Like he was the god of graffiti, you know? And so when Nace died, people's allegiance wasn't as strong, and like certain members got into like MSK, certain members got into other crews. I mean, Mayhem is still like a tight knit crew, and like it's a really small crew, but it's like Thailand, couple like LA, Jersey, Kansas City, Minnesota, whatever. But it's like, it's not like we have meetings or like hook up like this, you know? It's like, you know, it's a crew that's spread out internationally. So
interesting.
Yeah.
All right. And then let's see. Let's talk about the documentary.
Yeah.
I think, you know, part of the documentary when I had gotten out of prison at the end of my bid. It was 2001. I kind of had a vision to try to do the documentary. I believe we started doing the documentary, you know, you weren't involved just yet.
No.
But we had gotten a little bit going on it.
Yeah.
And then I believe you had taken film classes?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, when you were locked up, I was taking film classes, documentary classes. I was going to CSUN, where I met my homeboy Brainiac, which is a whole nother story. He was like looking at a magazine of that we were actually featured in a Mayhem issue of Cloud Magazine. He's like sitting next to me in my screenwriting class. And I'm like, yo, that's me. You know, I mean, this is when you could go to Tower Records and like fucking buy mags. And you go to the fucking Tower Records next to my school in Northridge, like, oh shit, like I'm in this magazine. This is sick, a full spread. Like it even has a roll call of Bleek, Anger, Nace, Nua, Chip, you know, Next, Impulse, whatever. So I was taking classes, and like I always knew like that's what I wanted to do because my uncle was a director. Both of my uncles were directors and producers. One did the X-Files, Supernatural, got me my first jobs in the industry. So I mean, I always looked up to them, even though my parents sucked. They were shitty. I always had like these uncles through marriage, through my aunt, that were just, you know, like the beacon of light in my life. Just like, oh shit, I have something like a path to follow. Thank you. So I always knew I wanted to do film. And Anger and Jason Martinez, were doing a cut of the CBS documentary, and I was like wanting to do this in film school as well. But I was very green at that point, you know, like I was just getting my foot in the door as a PA and like learning the ins and outs of post-production. And Jamar was a producer, you know, doing reality TV. And he had a vision of the CBS film, and I wrote a treatment as well. But his vision was a lot different than my vision. Obviously, it's always going to be that way with producers, you know? I mean, he wanted to end the story after Skate died, where I felt like there was a whole nother chapter after Skate died, which I was a part of. So I was like, I don't want it to end right there. Like, I mean, him dying was like a whole, you know, influence for another generation to follow his lead, which we still do. We still live by his rules, you know. It even trickled down to me, you know, like the respect that we have for him and his teachings, almost like a god, you know. But yeah, so I mean, I was so busy with work in the film industry and working at Fox Studios and, you know, being a PA, working 12 hours a day, getting paid peanuts, you know. Yeah. And these guys were filming interviews. They filmed like Mickey Avalon. They filmed me. Yeah, you guys, Mike One filmed a bunch, like, you know, 6 to 10 interviews. Mm-hmm. And like we had a meeting with J Moore on La Brea. And yeah, like I was just like, he had like taken the reins, and I was like, man, I was a cocky kid, and I was like, I don't really want to work for somebody else, you know. And plus my perception of it was completely different. Right. And so I was like, well, yeah, I don't think this is for me. I'm too busy. I mean, fuck, you know, like I could barely pay my bills. Right. You know, at that point, you know, I was like, what, 25 or whatever. And yeah, and go on and just tell where that was going with you guys.
So we kind of linked up. Cody definitely ended up taking the reins on the movie. It took a long time to get that movie out. I think it took a good
6 years.
6, maybe even more than that.
Well, since you guys started,
yeah,
I would say I think you guys started filming in like 2009. So that would be like 10 years. Because I took
took like 10 years.
I took like what you guys had done, Jason Martinez. I took those interviews. And of course, I shot like 20 more interviews. He gathered all the B-roll. And like, I mean, that's a whole nother story. I mean, it's such a process. And it's financially straining too, because you got to think, I mean, you're driving place to place constantly. I got to film this dude. I got to go here. I gotta go drop this footage off. I gotta pay for it to get digitized. I mean, it got to the point where luckily I was working in the film industry and I had so many connections. Also because I might have been a PA, but I was from CBS. I was Bleek, you know, like I already had my name in the game, you know, shapeshifters, whatever. So like a lot of people in the post-production industry are former writers, you know, like same with like the design industry or graphics. Like all these artists have a very artistic mind. So like, you know, one person could be doing crank anchors or an illustrator or graphic designer, you know, producer. Even like, so my boss, Nick Bradley, he was producing our shows at Sony, and he used to write Tame. And he's Venice, like local Venice hero. Used to write Tame and was friends with like Dilated Peoples. And like, that's how I hooked up with that crew, was because he had a Dilated Peoples hat. I was like, yo, what's up? You know, like I'm friends with like Rocka, blah, blah, blah. I got an album coming out called Speakeasy. So he hired me. I ended up working with him in like the post-production house. Like mad writers fucking were working there. Like I had the Billboard Bandits book out, and dudes were coming up to me like, hey, is that your book? I was like, no, I'm featured in it though, whatever. And like this dude, Matt Donovan's like, oh, my mom ran Earth Crew with skate. Like, I think she has footage. I was like, what? You know? Mm-hmm. So I hooked up with his mother, Sharon Donan, and like, yeah, she had this group called Hollywood Arts that filmed skate and worked with Earth Crew and worked with like Nerve and like all these legends. So we hook up and she brings all this footage, and we hook up with this dude, Ron Hill, and like go like through beta tapes with different decks that I borrowed from the facility. You know, so I'm sitting in Ron Hill's apartment from where he lived when he was hanging out with Skate, you know, so like basically a time capsule. And I'm sitting there for days on end, you know, in this apartment, just going through beta tapes, because he wouldn't let the tapes go. So I had to sit there for like 10 hours, like, you know, trying to transcode these tapes, digitize them on the spot, bring all this equipment, like fucking bulky ass decks. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot of that. And then Anger hooked me up with my boy Hash, who did The Line Stuffist, which was, explain what The Line Stuffist was.
Line Stuffist was a a graffiti crew that came out of Bakersfield, California, and they were mostly a train crew. And then I remember when Skate was still alive, he would show us videos of that Hash was doing that were called The Line's Toughest, and it was basically a lot of the trains that were getting painted in the early 90s. And so it was kind of like a like life was coming full circle, because I just remember we would be trying to piece everything together for the documentary, and we would be having, I think we had a tough time with Lisette.
Yeah.
It was very hard to get her to give up Rob One's tapes. I think
because there was a lot of animosity after how everything was handled with Rob.
Yep. And so I think Hash had was a great influence, because he was just somebody that knew, he was really good at editing at that point. Right.
Well, he had been doing it for a long time at that point. Yeah. And he was, technically savvy. Yeah, he was good at editing.
So there was a Santa Barbara
show part
of your life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Where,
let's get into how that even, how you hooked up with Hash. And I was there too, but there was
hold on.
meeting of styles, right? Glendale.
I think that was Was it
he had the shoes.
Meeting of styles.
Yeah.
And so TLT went from a graffiti crew to a documentary, and then Hash made it into a clothing line.
Yeah.
And a shoe company.
Yep.
And I linked up with him and started being a salesman for TLT as a clothing line and a shoe company, he had some really cool shoes. And stuff like that.
He made a CBS shoe.
Yep. And then I linked up Bleek and Hash together, and I felt like that was where it kind of came full circle.
Yeah.
And Hash was able to kind of, I think he guided you a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you were still
raw
at that point. You were not green, but
I couldn't even edit at that point. I was just learning how to edit. Yeah. Even though, and another reason I really wanted to do the CBS film from the get-go was I knew in my head, this is going to teach me how to edit. This is going to show me the ropes. I knew that was a catalyst for my career and to learn. Yeah. It was a learning curve for me. And I knew that was going to be my passion. I would be super passionate about it. So when I spearheaded it, I was oh yeah, I'll just pick this up along the way, because I don't give him nothing's going to stop me. Learning on the job. Yeah. And his connection with Hash, after we did a show in Santa Barbara, and we actually performed Speakeasy, my group with Avatar performed, and it was an art show that you threw with Hash, and Axis's band performed, and then we all ended up partying at Hash's dope ass pad up in the hills. And I was and he was dating this super hot stripper. And I was dude, this guy's rad. I love this guy, And he was he knew that would be the dream team. And every weekend after, I was Friday night on my way to Santa Barbara to hook up with Hash, partying his dope ass Oriental fucking loft overlooking.
Asian inspired.
Yeah. Well, Oriental is
Oriental
a style
is a rug.
Okay.
Oriental is not a.
Well, isn't it a Asian
Japanese
style?
It was Japanese.
Yeah.
Inspired.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, but the place was pimp.
Yeah.
And I'd roll up there. He'd have a bottle of Jack. Party days, definitely party days. Fucking straight after work from LA, from Hollywood, drive through the mountains to Santa Barbara. Bottle of Jack. Go to the fucking clubs. Go to the Wildcat. Party all night, wake up at 10 in the morning, coffee, breakfast, edit for 10 hours, go out at night again, get picked up in a lowrider fucking taxi cab service that he was best friends with. Yeah. And then they'd have a 12-pack of beer, go back to his pad, party some more, fucking edit all day the next day.
Wasn't that the coke hookup too? The guy in the fucking cab?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, I don't think so. No.
Oh, okay.
I don't think
I remember doing a lot of coke.
I don't think Hash did.
He never did. But I'm saying I remember hooking it up.
We'll edit that out. No,
yeah.
No, it was
You'll be in control of that.
Yeah, it definitely was not. No, he was just they would have a 12-pack. Yeah, they had a lowrider taxi service pick us up in a lowrider from the Wildcat, And like just that area, State Street, I think it's called, the Whiskey Richards.
Yep.
That's where we were shooting pool, like last call. These two girls come up to us like, hey, can we shoot pool with you guys? Blah, blah, blah. He ends up having a baby with her. You know, like me and him, he falls in love. Super serious relationship. So our relationship kind of severs because he becomes, you know, he starts becoming baby daddy. Like she's pregnant. So I end up basically finishing like the last hour of the movie on my own. Because I was working with him, he was editing. I was like with my laptop, okay, let's do this. Let's drop this in. Let's drop this. Like that's perfect for this. We're developing the story, you know, the arc of the story. And, so yeah, he was seminal for that project. It wouldn't have been done without him. And then I also met Devin, who ended up helping me shoot and all the assistant editor work. And at the post-production house, he was like wearing a Clout, Back to Clout magazine. He's wearing a Clout hat. And I was like, what's up? What do you know about this? He's like, oh yeah, like I used to write, blah, blah, blah. He's working in the tape room. And now he's like an online editor, but he also came through with the cameras, sound equipment, you know, like, and just made it happen.
Yep. And so it took, I mean, I remember, you know, we'd look at edits at your house.
Yeah.
We'd have the crew over, people would give their opinions. People didn't agree with things. People kept on telling us that we should take it in this direction, that direction. You got to hear a lot of opinions when you do a big project like that.
Especially with a big group of people you're making.
And everybody thinks that their story is the most important story, you know. And you know, I think after the documentary came out, which was the end of 2016. I mean, the amount of people that had big opinions about what they thought it should be. Yeah,
of course.
You know, but
like anything. Yeah.
But we came out with the movie. We did a 2-night premiere on Westwood Boulevard at the Crest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good night. Yeah. It was a positive night.
Fuck yeah,
Tons
it was amazing.
of fucking people came through, supported the movie. And then you took it on the road. I wasn't able to really be at a lot of those viewings. I mean, you took it to how many cities in America at that time?
Well, we were supposed to do that together. I was like, okay, well, I mean, but again, you have a family. I'm single, you know, at that point. And I'm like, fuck, I could just be gone for a month. I was working at Fox Sports at that time, editing for Fox Sports, and I think I just got laid off because they started automating the systems. Right. Fuck automation. But so I had time on my hands. I had some money, and I was like, dude, I'm just gonna hit the road, bring the movie, and like you have made a lot of connections for me to go hook up with Topper and Asheville, then go to Minnesota and hook up with Biafra and those guys. And then go to like Kansas City and so forth and so on, and go to different graffiti jams.
A good one in Vegas. Vegas was a great show.
Vegas was dope. It was outdoors. Yep. Yeah, like I forget the name of the spot, but yeah, like we screened it against like a trailer, and you could see like downtown Las Vegas. You could see the stratosphere, and you were watching our movie. And Anger was like a really good host, you know, like he would draw the crowd into it, and like, you know how boisterous he is. So like he would control the crowd, and like even if people started leaving, like get the fuck back in, like, you know, like we're not finished. And then we did like Phoenix. We did, I mean, we
a whole bunch. We did Orange
Canada.
County. Orange County was pretty cool.
Orange County was awesome. Yeah, that was sick. Yeah, we all got to perform. Yep. And again, like your show that you just had with lads, it started raining as we're performing. I'm like, fuck. Thank God I was wearing sandals.
Everybody was trying to leave, and I told them nobody could leave.
Yeah. But so those were good times. And then, then we hit some bumps in the road, obviously. And
so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
All right. So we had the documentary came out. We had lots of, people that were really into it. And then we had a period where you wanted to take it to the next level. And I think at that point, I think we had we had been around each other a lot.
Yeah.
For
years,
last
for 20 years.
15 years. We had just been really close with each other, hanging out with each other. Sometimes business and friends doesn't always end up being, the perfect mix. And you wanted to take it so that you could, get it online.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think, from my perspective, I was just kind of so busy with having a family. And I was, one of my responsibilities since 93 when Skate passed away was being the leader of the crew. And that was a lot of stress on me. And I kind of was just like, hey, go ahead and deal with the movie, and I'll just deal with what I deal with on a regular basis. And we had a big falling out.
Yeah.
We had a falling out that probably took us about a handful of years to come back from.
Yeah, and it definitely could have been solved quicker and easier. But we're both hard-headed dudes, like we both made our names in this world, so and graffiti writers have tough mentalities and like thick skin. You have to, and also with him, like he's always not bullied, but like treated me like the little brother, like whether it's like, like twisting my arm or like like throwing me in the bushes, tackling. But it got to a point where sometimes I would feel belittled, and it came like some of the, film things. Portland was dope. I met his whole family. I met his grandma. But then like sometimes I would feel belittled, like you throw me under the bus and say something sideways in front of people I didn't know, like kind of taking jabs and like, like as a little brother would too, like get frustrated and be like, bro, like, have I not earned the respect? Yeah. And like, there was a couple times we almost got into fights, and it was like, you would say something about some stupid shit I did in the past when I was drunk. And I'm like, bro,
you did a lot of stupid shit.
Of course, of course, we all have. Of course, that's what drunk people do, Yes. But I mean, like, so I took offense to some things, and and sometimes when I came back from a tour, like I just didn't feel like, like I felt like I could do no right, because it was like, oh, well, you didn't do this right. You didn't bring enough shirts. You didn't bring enough posters. Yeah, I mean, like, and plus I was like kind of on my own on the road, so like I didn't feel like fully supported. But again, like he has a family, I don't, so like even when I was like, I'm going to go to these 5 cities back to back to back, because I wasn't working, and you're like, oh, you should come home and then like recoup and then go. But it was like, there's no way like I could even afford to like go to Minnesota, come back, go to Kansas City, come back. So, I mean, we both had our ways of thinking about how things should be done. And also I wanted to try to recoup some money that I invested into it and get it into movie theaters and get it online and get it onto Amazon or get it onto Netflix. That was my dream. Yeah. For me, it was like, this is my future. This is my actual career, to be a film editor, which luckily I'm able to do now as a career. But this propelled me into that lifestyle and career and what I do now.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had a little bit of a fallout. I think we fucking argued multiple times, went back and forth. I ended up giving you the boot from the crew. You ended up not accepting it that greatly.
No.
And we had for a good portion of, I think that was 2020.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, to like 20.
It was right in the middle of the pandemic when that went down.
That's right, when that happened. Yeah,
and then you kept on pushing forward with the documentary. Yeah, and you ended up coming back out with the documentary. Different. It was a little bit different than the first version.
Yeah, let me segue on that.
Go ahead.
And that was another divide that we had. Like Anger wanted to like kind of like just show it, make DVDs of that original copy of the film, the original cut, and like go to like graffiti jams and like sell it on DVD, which would be cool. But I obviously was thinking like, okay, like I need this like to propel my career. I need this on Amazon, I need this on Netflix, something. And I also thought it was good enough to get to that point and to be in film festivals. And we got into a film festival, won Best Documentary.
Got a few film festivals.
Yeah,
right? There was
yeah,
like
yeah.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but so I knew like the potential of this film, and I knew how much I invested mentally, financially, my whole heart and soul into this project. This was my first child, you know. Sorry, Lance. It was my passion project. So I mean, like it was like a commitment for me it was like a 10-year commitment for me. It wasn't just like, okay, it's done, like let's move on. So I like you had talked to Risk about like maybe a potential distribution company, and nothing had happened with that channel. We had a couple channels we were discussing. So I reached out to the director of Saving Banksy, which Risk was producing along with this dude Kevin Zinger. And so I got in contact with Kevin, and he watched the movie, and he was like, yeah, it's cool, man. Yeah, like it's the talk of the town. It's like, it's getting a lot of hype. But he's like, man, it's like, I'd like, if you want to work with us, like it needs to be cut down. It's too long. I really couldn't stay focused. And that was the critique of a lot of people, even like Axis. He's like, man, there's too many talking heads. You know, and for me, like I was already so invested in like filming each one of these people and like having a relationship and like being so hard for me to take them out, you know? Like I was like, oh man, like we have footage of Skate, like even though it doesn't look good, but like it's gotta be in there. Like, oh, all right, spent like 2 days shooting this scene. Like I can't just take it out, you know? Like so like it was very hard for me to trust a third party. And that was a big question, like for me throughout the whole process. Like, are you ready to like hand it over to somebody else professional who's done this before? And I was like,
it's all done in house.
Yeah, all in house, all in house.
A lot of your money, a lot of your time, a lot of me, you know, fucking nitpicking at it. Other people nitpicking at it.
Yeah.
And but you kept your vision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was scared to like give it up but I was like, there's no way in hell I'll give it over until it's been out the first time, you know? And so they had an idea to retool it, to like recut it and like trim it down, make it for a broader audience. And I was like, cool with that idea. I was like, okay, well, if this is what it takes to take it to the next level, to get it on Amazon, to be able to stream it to the world, not just these, you know, these few cities we've been to, you know, niche, which in graffiti is very niche. So that's just like one audience. So yeah, I started working with these guys. Me and Anger had a kind of like disagreement about it, the fallout over the whole situation. So I ended up working with the producer of Saving Banksy, Brian Greif. And I just figured, to be honest with you, like it would be like, okay, let's just take these 3 scenes out, you know, like let's cut it down 30 minutes. Let's move this here, move this chunk here. It was like a total dissection of the entire film. Yeah. It was basically starting from scratch, which I had no idea like it was going to be that rigorous of a process. And when I first started working with him, he was so intense and so, you know, meticulous with every little fucking edit, every frame, you know, like I was like, I can't. And he was like, yo, take this out, get rid of this, get rid of that. And I was like, yeah, but that's like Crayola in 1997, you know, like nobody's going to notice that but you. Like take this footage of Skate out. I was like, we can't lose it. That's like Skate when he first got into CBS from like 1987, 86. And I was like, we can't. He's like, it looks like shit. It's washed out. Like Netflix would never approve this. I was like, I was pushing back so much, and I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't fucking do this. I was like, Brian, like you're killing me. And then eventually, like I started to trust the process, and he was right. Like now, when I watch the original cut of the film, like I can't. Like it's just too much going on, too much shit, too many people, too much footage. Like it like gives me anxiety. Like I'm like, bro, like looking back to where my mindset was, I was so green in the process. I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's like I threw everything in you could possibly throw in. Where it's just like, you know, it's like painting a piece where you're like, well, bro, just stop. It looks good. Yeah. You know, like, oh, let me add a cloud here. Let me add a drip here. Let me like, oh, like I have every different color of the rainbow. Let's add, you know, sometimes it's like, okay, you're done. It's good, you know? Right. So I really appreciate like their guidance and where they took this film. And I mean, this is the final copy, but I mean, like to get it on Blu-ray, to get it on DVD, to get a distributor, like now. And then another thing that we had problems with was they came up with the idea to do like kind of like a GoFundMe with this company, Pledge Audio or some shit. And that was a bad idea. And this was like kind of the beginning of the end too, because even though their company had like a lot of money, I think they wanted to see how many followers and fans we could come up with, how many people are really going to like invest in the film. So we did a pledge campaign, which it was all my face on like doing the video. And, so we raised like a few $1,000. We would sell different tiers, like, okay, a DVD. I mean, not a DVD, a soundtrack DVD and a movie for like $25, a poster and the film, but not knowing that the film was going to take 4 more years, I had no fucking idea. I thought it was going to take a year, but nope. We did reshoots. We reshot a bunch of people. We did a bunch of things. And
the narration was originally done by
John Bernthal. The original narrator was John Bernthal. He became too famous, too busy. What up, John? He's going crazy over the fucking Redskins right now. But then, he was just too busy. It was a pandemic. Like he actually didn't have the equipment at his house before his podcast. So they brought in one of their own artists who we all looked up to. And we were like surrogate homie, like through old school times, which was House of Pain, Everlast.
Right.
And I was like, oh, dude, that voice, Everlast. He's on their record label, Suburban Noise, with Regime. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. So he knocked it out. It was sick. It was great. He did a great job. And I was like, yeah, like that works. It's perfect. But this whole pledge campaign that I did, like through them, which was their idea, so we made some money. Like I think it was like $2,500, $3,000, but it was like $20 a person, whatever. The fucking website mid-campaign folded, like completely like folded. You couldn't even go to their URL anymore. Everybody who was on the site, all the bands who had money, incoming money, like lost everything. It like fucking like TikTok today, just went down. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, where's this money? So I never saw a penny of that. And when the movie came out of my own pocket, the whole list that we had of people who donated money, like I sent them DVDs that I paid for, and the packaging and the shipping. And that was like off a rudimentary email list. So that's what happened with that.
Right. And so the movie ended up coming, the new version of it came out in what year?
2022.
Got it.
Yeah. So like, I think it was,
end of 22. Right?
Yeah, I think it's the end of 2022. A lot of people were frustrated with me, frustrated with like not getting their DVD. I mean, again, like you are donating towards a bigger cause. Yes. I mean, I'm sorry it took 5 years to get your DVD, but I mean, I dropped $80,000 into this film and spent like 10 years of my life. So I hope you enjoy it on YouTube where it's free, because people like could either watch it on Amazon and spend $5, which goes to the company, or you could watch it on YouTube. When people like actually come up to me and they're like, yeah, I just waited to watch it on YouTube. I'm like, bro, like that's not helping filmmakers,
Right.
And like everything we've done, all of us is DIY. My book, DIY, the movie, do it yourself. Like all your, every company you've worked with and all your aspirations have been DIY, like Graph Angeles. I was here, all out of our own hardworking pockets.
Yep, exactly. It's tough, man. It's tough. I think when people tell me they're going to do a documentary, I urge them not to. And I tell people that it's a lot harder than you think it's going to be. And it's going to break up your friendships with people. And it's going to take you in a direction you really didn't think it was going to take you. Now with all the platforms that are out there, I don't think you really need to come out with a documentary, and hence the podcast, right?
Yeah.
We're able to tell a bigger, larger story with more intricacy and We had Hex on our first podcast. We've got Joe Conley coming up, and this is our third podcast, which is, it's a great to hear this story. Why don't we just tell the audience about the text you shot me?
Oh, yeah. And we talk about that in your interview with Hex. But yeah, I was, like me and him have been beefing, to the point where I'm like, fuck, am I going to run into him at this show? There was a couple of times we almost crossed paths. Like you were painting, I was like, fuck, are we going to fight? Am I going to catch a beat down? Like, I'm not trying to fight this guy. Like, he's a big bulldog, but whatever. I was just like, man, like if it happens, it happens, but, so yeah, of course, like, and just like fielding questions, like, why aren't you from CBS anymore? Like, oh, like this dude, I'm like, bro, that's some personal shit. Like, that's between us. Like, the whole world doesn't need to know everything. As Crayola walks in the house, yes.
Big Crayola in the house.
Yeah, we got like the fucking crew in here. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was just a ton weighing on me and like fielding questions. And, like I'm constantly the whole time, berated with questions and like introduced as Bleek from CBS, even when I'm like in Miami at Art Basel, which the first one I went with him, he brought me, but like I went the last couple of years. But even when I'm with like other crews like the MSKs or, like whatever, and it Revoke or whoever is introducing me, this is Bleek from CBS. And like, it's hard to be like, oh, well, I'm not from CBS anymore. I'm just, pushing mayhem now. I mean, it's just like, it's just like, I just feel stupid. I'm like, dude, this is like immature, like being known as from CBS. And like, I mean, that's my lineage. That's my history. Like, I'm the guy who, put the film out. It's like, it's just weird, it was more weird than anything and just awkward. So, I mean, it's like, that of course weighed on me. And like having my wife pregnant, about to have a kid, it was like, like I was in the shower. I was like, man, fuck this, man. I'm just going to text this dude, like it's time to like put this behind us. And like within, I got a new life to worry about, not all this other stress and bullshit that I've helped create in my life, like time to put the water under the bridge or whatever, bury the hatchet into my back. But, yeah, I texted him and like, he texted back, we talked, and then, yeah, you go on with that. Sorry.
So yeah, I received a text early morning. I'm having coffee, or I think I came down to the text right even before I had coffee, and I saw the text and it just said, I've been stressed. It's affecting my health. I really want to, bury the hatchet with you. I don't want to have any beef. And, throughout on the other side of the coin, I'm fielding questions from everybody. And there's part of me that wants to, talk shit all the time on Bleek, but I got to give it to him. He stood his ground, got the documentary out to the place where it's at now. And I would I'd watch the documentary and I was like, it looks great. It's awesome. I didn't feel like there was anything, there was anything in there that I could really say that was negative. I was stoked that it was out. I was mad most of all that I had lost my little brother, because I've always looked at you as my little brother. And I knew that you had gone through a tough life, losing your parents, and I knew that that CBS was your family, and you probably missed being around your family. So that morning, I just decided to text you back, decided to get on the phone with you, and I dropped my ego, and I just said, "Yeah, let's talk. Let's solve this. Let's get this going in a better direction." And it was oddly enough that you ended up having your kid at UCLA Hospital, where I went and had surgery when I got shot back in the day. I was working not too far away from that hospital, maybe 200 feet away.
Yeah.
And I would check on Bleek every day, make sure he was good mentally, and that if he needed anything, I was there for him. And we are, 6 months or so. How
Yeah,
old is your kid now?
5.
5 months?
Yeah, he's
so we're
5.
about 6 months into our new relationship.
Yeah, 6 months.
And like I've said in the Hex interview, I'm really happy to have Bleek back in the crew.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
I know that he's happy to have his family back. He put a lot of work, time, effort, money, all that shit into it. And I'm stoked to have reevaluated and reinvigorated our friendship. And I value who he is as a person. And I've learned a lot throughout this process on how to just let things go. Don't hold on to negative things, because that's a cancer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we all know what cancer does to you. It tears you apart. It takes your life. A lot of the frustrations that I went throughout being the leader of the crew for the last 30-something years is the same kind of frustration that Skate was going through when he was the leader of the crew. And it's not, as much as it's not easy for you to do a documentary and feel like you don't have, the backing that you need. I get those. I have that same feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's tons of times where I feel like I'm on my own and I don't have anybody helping me. And I'm stoked to have you back on the crew. I'm looking forward to pushing this podcast further into the future. And I'm happy that you're here, brother. All right?
Yeah.
I love you.
You too.
All right. So that's it.
Yeah, good. That was good.
Good fucking podcast. Thank you, everybody. Can't Be Stopped crew. 2025. We'll be coming out with a bunch of episodes. You guys stay tuned for what we're doing. If you guys got any suggestions on people that you want to see interviewed, go ahead and hit us up. All right. Can't Be Stopped. Bleak one, from negatives to positive. It's about having a tough life, getting through those tough times, and being a fucking good person and sharing the wealth of your knowledge with everybody that you come across. All right? Drop that fucking negativity. Be a positive person. It's all about that. All right? Blessings. Have a good one. Peace.
Sweet.